I just thought I'd start with acknowledgement. We're here today on Ngunnawal country. I feel so blessed to be here on this country and acknowledge how the Ngunnawal people have cared for these lands for millennia. I want to extend this to all nations of the Murray-Darling Basin and beyond. The lands have changed, but not the determination of our people and our advocates. I want to acknowledge all those that have come before us, those that are doing deadly work now, and those that will come into the future to keep this going. I would like to also ask everyone to stop, pause for a sec, and think about all the people that are in our lives and our community doing deadly work and acknowledge them now. I also hope that you'll be a voice for country and care for it any way that you can. I'd just like to introduce who we are. My name's Jeff Reid, a Gomeroi man, First Nation engagement lead for the One Basin CRC. We also have Uncle Felly McHughes, the Amber Man, chair of our First Nations Management and Advisory Committee for the One Basin CRC. Beery O'Day, a Gungaloo and Birri woman, First Nations research for the One Basin CRC. And Prof. Troy Meston, ULAI and Gamilaroi, First Nation program lead for the One Basin CRC. I'd also like to acknowledge that we've got Uncle Mike Gilby and Uncle Raymond Thompson here with us today from the MDVA First Nations Leadership Group in the room with us. Our partners, I'd like to acknowledge the partners of the One Basin. They play an important role for the CRC and what we do. When we co-design our projects, we gain input from our end-user organisations and then develop these with our commercialisation partners and knowledge agencies. We also bring First Nations and communities to one table where everyone has a voice. Our regional hubs, the One Basin spans across the Murray-Darling Basin, where our thriving hubs are located in Goondiwindi, Griffith, Mildura and Loxton. With the Billabong Project, we look to partner with existing Indigenous ranger programs right across the basin and incorporate these into thriving cultural hubs. When our team goes to different parts of the basin, the same challenges keep coming up. Widespread degradation and poor water quality, climate volatility, biodiversity loss, and embedding First Nations-led caring for country and community solutions. This is only too evident where I'm living in southwest Queensland, where we've been peppered with large hail in the last few weeks and fierce storms, hail 9 to 10 centimetres in diameter. We also see communities such as Mungundai who don't have suitable drinking water, and what you catch out of the river can't be eaten at all. Their gardens and veggie patches dying due to the water, washing machines needing to be replaced. And while people are keen to be embedded in First Nations into what they are doing, there's still challenges here for this to become business as usual and to be natural. So let's start the yarn around collaboration, and I'll pass it over to Uncle Felly. So how did the Billabong start?
Well, I'll just give you a snapshot. It started almost 30 years ago, and we had 400 hectares of land in Brewarrina, where I come from. We had a water licence, which was a very valuable one, and had different people saying, look, we should grow crops, we should do this, we should do that. And one day I was sitting in the office and I decided to go out and just visit the site. And while sitting under a kalilubar tree on the banks of the river, I don't know how it came to me that there was a small end section of a billabong. And I had said, well, I think I'll pump this billabong. And because we were building at the time, we didn't really need to go to government for funding. We were self-funded, so we bought we had funds to pay for two men. We had a tractor, and we bought a Deutsch pump. Pumped about 25,000 gallons a minute or whatever. And anyway, so that's what we did, and that's how the idea and the birth of the Billabong happened. It was about maybe 500 metres of Billabong at the tail end, and to see a billabong come to life is quite a unique experience. I don't think too many people have seen that, and the ecological life force that came back to that place, I hadn't seen since I was a child or a young boy. Birds, all sorts of life happen, and we tried to get the government interested in. We were visited by Bill Mollison, the godfather of permaculture, and he came down and he actually said, "Well, we don't really need to say much about this. You're on the right track in regards to what you're doing." So that was the first attempt, which was in '97, and I say that's almost 30 years ago. And since then, we've had decades of different programs on the Billabong. We worked with, we moved next door to a bigger Billabong, which was 6 kilometres, and we worked with the Department of Primary Industries to do some stuff there, and also the local land services group, which was the CMA back then. And we were really doing good stuff. And if you could see the slide up there, it's you can see the young people that were involved in that project.
You look a bit younger there.
I do look a bit younger there. I do. So yeah, and so before we got to now, we had many attempts to try and get the governments interested in billabongs. But one of the things that I found was through Western science eyes, billabongs are sadly not recognised. And if you look up through Western science eyes, billabongs are, it is an Australian term for a branch of a river, an isolated stagnant pond or dead end channel created by water flowing from the mainstream during a flood or left behind after a river changes course. Now, to me, that's just saying, look, these billabongs are worth nothing. They do not, they're not a part of the river system. They had no role to play, and that's the way it was. And I think that's why it was a hard sell. And then I went around and talked to some of the younger non-Aboriginal people in Sydney when I was there, and I asked them, what is a billabong? And basically, I came away with, it was once a jolly squag and camped by a billabong. And basically, that's all they knew about that. But through First Nations eyes, when healthy billabongs have a rich natural diversity of plants and animals, they can act as filtering systems, remove sediments and pollutants from water. The capacity of billabongs to maintain and improve water quality is under threat because human activity and extreme weather conditions have had a significant impact on water flows, nutrient balance and biodiversity. Billabongs, through First Nations eyes, are the kidneys of the river. They produce now this is a big statement, and it's true. It comes from our instinctual knowledge and science of our people. The rivers, the billabongs are the kidneys of the river. They produce the antibiotics for the river's immune system. So, and we've proven that through the work we've done leading up to this project now. So that's what a billabong is about. I'll just go back to what is cultural billabong restoration. Cultural billabong restoration is an Indigenous design methodology to close the gap based on culturally appropriate employment to care for country, to restore billabongs and riparian ecosystems. By restoring this connection to country, giving opportunity to exercise cultural creativity through culturally appropriate and meaningful employment, the project aims to empower Indigenous people trapped in a cycle of socio-economic disadvantage and deprivation boost regional communities across a full range of social indicators, health, education, crime, domestic violence, drug, alcohol abuse, whilst also improving ecosystems' health by harnessing cultural knowledge of land and water management. The project specifically targets the most socio-economically disadvantaged fringe dwellers, but in this new program, Troy will talk about that, how we're trying to get the wording right so that we connect with the appropriate decision makers. The project specifically targets the most socio-economically disadvantaged fringe dwellers, that is, those who may be less able, ready, or interested to access or participate in mainstream employment. Indigenous communities excel when they are working with the land as custodians. Now, I just want to go back to the early part when you had 15 young people that went out with the DPI and just a quick yarn was when I was first going out, I pulled into the local service station, and the proprietor said, "Philly, what are you doing, mate?" I said, "I'm taking the kids out. We're going to do this Billabong restoration stuff." And you more or less said, "Well, good luck with that mob, mate." And then several months later, after them going to TAFE and doing certificate 1, 2, and 3, and he said again, "Felly, look, Joe's there's been a change in those young fellas, And it wasn't just, it was a mixture. There was some non-Aboriginal kids, there was our people, and there was some young Aboriginal boys and girls that came out, and they did really well. And I did a little bit of data gathering with the local police, and on that project, and they did say there was a drop in crime, and also court attendance was down. So we could see the positive social impact in that. Okay, I hope I'm being clear on this. The vision for the project is to become an industry of its own across the state or basin in which a workforce is developed based on the methodology. In this way, the project strives to provide a paradigm shift to closing the gap. Key to success in partnerships, particularly between private landowners and traditional owners, to demonstrate mutual respect and collaboration. So that's the objectives we're sort of working on now is the cultural side is close the gap, connection to country, passing down knowledge, access to sites on private land, socio-economic aims, culturally appropriate employment, training and skills developed, flow-on effects to community, improved health, education, crime indicators, etc. And with the environmental targets and outcomes, Billabong restoration, habitat improvement, feral species management, embedded Indigenous science and knowledge in water management, and water quality improvements, or water health, as we like to say, as black collar. So, well, I might just leave you with that, and I'd love to hear back from you. And maybe Jeff might want to ask me for them. This you can see this is we have supported the local irrigators. And that guy on the right with the bush, Joe Robinson, he's the chairman of Food and Fibre. And the old guy on the left with me and Christine Freak, Christine's a water policy person with New South Wales Irrigators, and Bernie George. And one of the things that really cemented it for me, Bernie is an old man that's been in the industry for a long, long time. I think he was maybe 78 then. And but he did say to me, he pulled me aside and he said, "Charlie, look, mate," he said, "you're on the right track with this Billabong stuff for the health of our rivers. We desperately need it as an industry. We need it with our communities, and we need it for the health of the river and a healthy basin as a whole." So to have that kind of wisdom, as an elder talking to you, and not only, and our elders were saying that anyway, but to get it from a guy like Bernie George, who's been in the industry for a long time and could have been an offender of it, but it just endorsed that we were on the right track. And the award there, it's an award-winning project. Back in 2009, there was 5,000 entries into the local land care award, and this project ran second. But, you know, you would think if it was an award-winning project, that would be a long way down the track. But because of certain things that happened, we've come to this point now. So yeah, and but the big thing for me with this project was the young people. They were really the local towns were calling up the local community, you know, called them sort of some things you don't want to repeat, and they were doing some wrong things. But once they started doing something that was culturally appropriate and it was natural development, they achieved the certificates in Land 1 through 3 of land management, and they were even speaking the Latin names of the plants and that, you know, and I couldn't even name that, and which was just that was really the thing for me, and but hopefully through now with this program here, with the way Troy and One Basin CRC are developing, we can accelerate it along. So,
Thanks, Adam.
yeah,
Yeah, so if we care and heal country and the Billabong, country and the Billabong will heal and care for us.
exactly.
Troy, do you want to say what we've been up to?
Thanks very much, Uncle. Thank you, Jeffrey. That was a wonderful introduction, and you can see the genesis of the initiative here and the large scale aspiration that we have here inside the CRC to be able to ensure that we get foundational funding to be able to continue this initiative, but also to scale it up right across the basin. So, Uncle Felly's idea in and around working with Billabongs in a lot of ways is a metaphor for the way that our people have been treated in terms of land management and leadership across the basin. Like Billabongs, you know, they were sort of relegated, you know, to be, you know, to unimportant in a large scale of the way that water moves down those river systems. Key aspect of this program is to elevate Aboriginal people and position our knowledges and our sciences to be an integral part of the rehabilitation and sort of the maintenance of these river systems, you know, for future generations. So Uncle Felly spoke about the early origins of the project. You could see the objectives. We're really focused upon socioeconomic targets, looked at closing the gap initiatives, but also the ecological benefits of having Aboriginal people and young people working in and around country and water. For us, now, the first challenge that I received from Mike Stewart and the CRC CEO when I come into the CRC was we have this wonderful idea and innovative opportunity to be able to, you know, ensure that we're bringing multiplicity of stakeholders in and around this exciting initiative with Uncle Felly. How do we actually do it? How do we give it legs? And so we went away as our First Nations research program. We did a lot of work, co-design sessions. We had a number of co-design sessions, and what we settled on was that we have a really thriving and well received First Nations Ranger programs that operate right across the country, so funded federally as well as funded by state and territory governments. So what we have is we have a model that we know that both sides of government and right across Australia actually see value in, and the logic is fairly simple. Prepare Aboriginal people to work on country and work with water, you get generative benefits, and what we want to do is we want to amplify that opportunity. And we want to ensure that these ranger programs, one, remain as a central asset to the management of water systems and country right across Australia. But number two, we want to ensure that we're amplifying their impact not only upon country and the waterways, but also amplifying their effect upon the people who work within these programs, and then the communities who benefit from that stewardship and that sort of activity across across, the natural landscapes. So very broadly, we're extending the original vision and aspiration of Uncle Felly to target some key areas. So we have the environmental dimension, and we have the closing the gap dimensions going right across the revised scope of the Billabong initiative. We want to amplify the education and training opportunities, but we also want to target that anecdotal evidence that we know as Aboriginal people of the benefit that we get from being connected to country and working on country. We want to use this initiative as an opportunity to be able to heal our people through the work that they undertake while they're engaged in these First Nations ranger programs. In doing so, we want to ensure that there's opportunities that allow them to be able to tap into the digital economies and the opportunities that the disruption of technology will bring. Also want to create the opportunities to be able to seed commercialization opportunities that come from working in and around country and water, and that we want to make sure that we have a robust data capture and evaluation system so that we can create a really strong evidence base to be able to take out our case further, beyond this pilot initiative. So just in a quick detail, we'll just give you a snapshot of the revision of this particular initiative, the revised initiative, and I'll hand over to Biri at the end to be able to show you some of the specific detail in and around this sort of revised aspiration for the Billabong initiative. So to begin, we just talk about some of the challenges and complexities that we face as Aboriginal people working across the basin. So we have research and the history, the negative history in and around sort of ethical practice with our people. We have a natural distrust of governments and sort of negative policy and the implementation in and around our people, and how that's created intergenerational trauma and legacies and dispossession for our people. We have the fundamental challenge that, despite being fairly populous across the Murray-Darling Basin, our people only control 0.2% of available surface water, which is, but that's a complex challenge in and of itself. We have the recent complexity of the overwhelming no referendum, and there's, as we'll see in a second, we see that there's really no substantive progress towards closing the gap. That's the challenges that we face. However, we've got to think innovatively, and we've got to be strategic about our efforts, and that's why we're inviting collaboration through this particular webinar to be able to help us, walk with us, to be able to find some solutions to the ongoing challenges that we face across the Murray-Darling Basin. All right, quick snapshot of the environmental monitoring dimension. So we understand that climate change and climate risk presents existential threats, not only to the globe but to Australia, and then in the local context where we find ourselves in the Murray-Darling Basin. So from the AR6 report, just go back a sec, AR6 IPCC report, we see that they state very openly and clearly that there's a rapidly closing window of opportunity to be able to secure our livable and sustainable futures. So we have a window of opportunity that must be seized. However, it's rapidly closing. And in the second subheading there, equity and inclusion, we see that adaptation outcomes are enhanced by increased support to regions and people with the highest vulnerability to climatic hazards. So it means that we've got to act fast, and that there's a role for all of us to play, but most importantly, those who are most at risk as a result of this cascading risk from climate crisis. More specifically, in Australia, we see that the latest climate risk assessment has outlined a number of dimensions of scaling risk. But what's really important, you can see that on the left-hand side of the screen, is that we see that there's a fundamental role to play for our people, for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and our knowledge in responding to the crisis of climate and ensuring that we're part of the solution. We're actually leading the agendas towards dealing with this scaling and escalating risk. More specifically, for our context across the Murray-Darling Basin, we see that not only climate has exacerbated the challenge of ensuring that there's equity, but also fair provision of water and natural resources. But we have fundamental pooling or, sort of restrictions of flows that go from the top to the bottom. We saw a number of years ago, we saw the Menindee fish kills. We see in the center of the screen that, despite being on track, with our SDL targets, that it's more complex and complicated for our people, that, it's more than just adding water, there's more than just, to solve these problems takes more than just an influx of water moving down the system. There's the impact, intersectional impact upon people's communities, and making sure that we have quality of water so people can, as Jeffrey mentioned early on, that we can eat what comes out of the rivers, we can drink from the rivers, and allow our people to be able to swim back in those river systems. That's really important for us. So a key point of difference for this iteration of the Billabong initiative is working strategically and with a science-based, evidence-based foundation to be able to enhance and amplify the therapeutic benefits for our people to be able to work in and around country. So for us, we can see that unfortunately the continuing history of shared relationships between Aboriginal people and those who now call Australia home, we can see it. We can see the cascading impact of these relationships, unfortunately, presented fairly clearly through the Closing the Gap targets. We've highlighted on the screen here, we've got 9 or so targets that this particular iteration of the Billabong initiative will fundamentally target. And as you can see on the screen, only one of those highlighted targets is actually seeing improvement on track. Most, we have no change from the baseline, and unfortunately, we have some that are worsening and not on track. So this, the window's closing for climate, but the window's also closing for our people. The health and trauma dimension, and this is the key point of difference that we bring to this. So I'll just tell you a quick story very quickly. So a number of years ago, I was involved with the ARC Centre of Excellence in and around neuroscience, and was tasked with the challenge of interrogating the literature to be able to see if there was any sort of benefit in applying neuroscientific evidence to enhancing educational outcomes for Aboriginal kids in mainstream classrooms. And as I was going through the literature, I come across a number of key areas that resonated a lot with me, and particularly my role early on as a teacher within schools. What I found was that toxic stress, and you can see that represented in the red circle in the left-hand corner of your slide, is a stress state that is unfortunately ongoing. And tolerable stress in the middle there is a stress situation that fluctuates between toxic and positive, but the key mitigation factor in allowing you to be able to handle the stress dimensions that come into your life is the buffering of really supportive relationships. What we find in Aboriginal families is that we have legacies of intergenerational trauma. We have violence in our homes. We have kids where that it's not safe for them to be in their houses, and that's just some of the impacts of the shared history that we have together. So when I was investigating the literature, I came across this notion of allostatic load, which is, if you're familiar with any sort of physiological literature or discussion, the normal state of the body is called homeostasis, and optimum levels of functioning for the human being is referred to as homeostasis. However, this concept of allostasis or allostatic load is a heightened level of stress that unfortunately doesn't have the mitigating factors of supportive relationships or supportive environments. And then what you have is a cascading set of circumstances that if I was to apply a metaphor to the situation, it would be like driving down the road with your foot fully planted on the accelerator and just riding your car for 100, 200 kilometers in that particular state. Over time, there'll be significant wear and tear on the infrastructure of the car that you're traveling in. And unfortunately, that's the physiological state of a lot of our kids and our people who are in these traumatic, toxic stress states. So a key fundamental objective of this particular program is working closely with Aboriginal community control health organisations and partnering with experts in neuroscience to add this layer of trauma-informed practice over the way that we operate with our targeted ranger crews. Just very quickly, we'll look at opportunities to be able to scale enterprise development. So one of the key closing the gap targets is intergenerational legacies of poverty and cycling inequality. What we want to do is we want to ensure that we're targeting fundamental opportunity into Aboriginal communities to be able to, enhance those regional economies. You can see here on the left-hand side figure, you can see right down the middle, we can see the impact of shared history, particularly in this country, even though this is a figure that's taken from the US. You can see from intervention, we see property, we see colonization, we see capitalism, and we see drastic effects to people and environment. And on the right-hand side of that particular figure, you can see the cascading impacts for Indigenous nations in and around the proximity to this particular shared history. Unfortunately, one of the key challenges that we face is that through shared history and settler colonialism, we don't have the opportunity or fundamental access to our lands and our waters. It doesn't allow us an opportunity to be able to benefit in the same way that new Australians do from access to our lands and waters. So a fundamental pillar of this program is ensuring that we create further opportunities for Aboriginal communities in these regional areas. Things that we can look at, natural sort of leverage points is in and around ecotourism, the circular economy, carbon offsets, bush food and art centres, as really logical touch points to be able to enhance opportunity for our people. Another area that we really want to look at is targeting future technology and AI influenced economies. So we can see that there's wonderful benefit to nations and communities for being involved in this digital economies. However, the challenge for our people, and you can see represented fairly graphically here, is that fortunately, large majority of our people are highly excluded from really participating in the digital space, but also benefiting from opportunities that come from the digital economies. So that will be presented on the next slide very quickly. So we're heading into the fifth industrial revolution, which means there's going to be a really enhanced connection between human beings and technology. And if our people don't have the opportunity to be able to build our capability in and around digital technologies, and we don't have access to the complex infrastructure, then the opportunities that we can see that will come on the right-hand side of the slide will be missed opportunities for our people, particularly in the regional areas. To bring this section to a close, share some final thoughts from one of the influencing elders that myself and Viri worked really closely with, Auntie Mary Graham, Convamary Waka Waka elder. She talks about the relationship between land and people as being the fundamental relationship, and that the strength and tone and tenor of that relationship between land and people then becomes the blueprint for the relationship for people themselves. The way that you treat land and the way that you treat water then becomes the blueprint for how we treat each other. So from an Aboriginal standpoint, all of our meaning, all of our relationships come from land and water and the way that we look after them. And I think that's a key message that's at the heart of our Billabong initiative. Mary?
Thanks, Troy and Jeff and Uncle Fally. So here, what does all of this look like? What do all of these different pillars look like? How does it work? We're proposing that each Billabong site would be basically a knowledge hub where there's inputs from several different of the pillars that Troy talked about. So there's the wraparound health support that's provided to rangers within these knowledge hubs. There's specialist educators. There's the ability, Uncle Fally touched on it before, for that learning and micro-credentialing for rangers engaged in these programs. It's also providing a point for people who have contact with youth justice, who maybe wouldn't normally be engaged in work and things, to actually be engaged in this program. And it is also touching on that sort of data infrastructure, IT, and providing a place for mob to capture their own data and to house it, look after it, and then to grow that enterprise development. So in each site, we propose. So we have got a 3-phase project happening over 5 years. So these knowledge hubs in phase 1, we're looking at having 3 trial sites, but having a lot of linkage and connection between the various ranger sites so that they're sharing between themselves, sharing with each other. And you can see on the right there the kind of cross-pollination of all the different things happening. We're looking, not just for a healthy river system, but a healthier community out of this. So at the moment, these are the current ranger programs that happen across all of Australia. And on the right shows the ones within the Murray-Darling Basin. There's actually Murray-Darling Basin rangers, as well as the ranger program for the MDB, as well as other ranger programs. And we've been in discussions with a few ranger sites already, getting interest from various communities that want to be part of this program. So this is where we are at the moment. We're at the start, the sort of preparation of this. So we Uncle Felly obviously had the idea that he spoke about earlier. He trialed it. He brought it to us, and we're now at the expanding it to what we've done now. We've done community consultation, and we're looking to formalize core institutional partnerships to underpin the implementation of this. We're also looking to get, industry, philanthropy, government, as many people as possible interested and engaged in this program so that we can make it a reality. The next couple of slides, I appreciate people who are on their laptops or smaller screens. This may be difficult to see, but some of us are sitting in a room with a really large screen. But it's just to show that over the program, the 3 phases over 5 years, that a lot of thought and preparation has kind of gone into what this would look like. So the first year, which is phase 1, it's the setting up of everything that's required to start this program. So it's getting those institutional partnerships set up. It's having, developing the sort of work programs that would inform the education for people and that sort of thing. It's organising all of the inputs that would be required for each knowledge hub site. So that would be the sort of year 1, phase 1. And then in year 2, we look to actually start operating within 3 trial sites across the basins. So it's site-based workforces and governance structures in a northern, central and southern basin trial site. It's also the start halfway through, or it's the second quarter of the year, looking at delivering programs of education to the rangers and staging that out across every few months, changing it up, giving them the opportunity to engage in new knowledge, new learning, while also providing that consistent access to archos to whatever wraparound support and healthcare that they require. And then when we move to phase 3, which is year 4 and 5, after these, we look to roll it out at 6 additional sites after the initial trial over years 2 and 3. So where we are now is we're at a point where we're looking for, other people that want to walk on this journey with us, that want to be part of this project, that want to engage in something that, can help our mob care for country, help country care for them, and help bring about some change for some issues that don't just affect us as Aboriginal people, but affect everybody. declining water quality, biodiversity loss, climate extremes. All of these things affect all of us, not just Aboriginal people. So that's why we're looking, for people that want to join with us to be part of this, really positive change across the basin.
Excellent.
All right, we might run through some questions now. So Martin has a question for Troy. There seems to be a lot of willingness for collaboration and many people in country that are interested in getting involved, but it doesn't appear that there is much, if any, funding to facilitate First Nations groups to sustainably getting involved. How do we solve these funding issues?
Good question. And one of the fundamental enduring challenges that we face as Aboriginal people in this country is how do we actually get long-term meaningful funding to be able to actually make a difference to our communities and the people within our communities. So we have to be a bit creative, and I think we have a wonderful opportunity through the remit of the CRC. So the CRC gives us an opportunity to be able to span across a really comprehensive and broad partner network. So we're working with end users, we're working with commercial entities, but we're also working with knowledge providers, which gives us a really fundamental head start in attracting attention and attracting sort of coalition of the willing, if you will. From there, what we need to do is we need to be creative about how we go about securing long-term opportunities. So as Barry mentioned, we're looking at philanthropic opportunities, we're looking at partnerships with government, we're looking at partnerships with industry. How can we stitch together a raft of really broad support to be able to ensure that we have the ability to be able to demonstrate and mobilize a really wonderful, innovative proof of concept. Once we have a proof of concept and we collect our valuation data, and I think that will give us a really strong foundation to be able to go to further government, have further talks with government to be able to secure long-term investment in this. So to answer your question, we're targeting areas that already have attracted funding. So we know that range of programs are welcomed by both sides of government right across Australia. So there's money, fundamental base funding that goes into these range of initiatives. And the idea for us is then how do we actually piggyback off that willingness from both sides of government to be able to support investment in Aboriginal people to look after waterways in countries.
Thanks, Grubber. Scott's got a question for Uncle Felly. Thanks, Uncle Felly, for sharing the story. I was wondering how recent the newspaper clippings were of you, Bernie, Christine and Joe. Are they still involved and supportive of the project?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Sam. They're the New South Wales irrigators are still very much supporting this, and because for us to have a macro process where we can heal all the river, because the industry is fenced off all the rivers, we need to have that collaboration. And when you look, the summit, the leadership summit last year, there was overwhelming support for collaboration between industry, First Nations, and most stakeholders in the basin to get First Nations instinctual knowledge is probably the key to healthy rivers for generations. So I hope that answers you. But they're still very keen to be involved. I'll be meeting with them this week in Sydney again with the irrigators and just continue to keep pushing.
Thanks, Afkul. Therese has a question for Barry. The digital divide is so scary and seemingly will contribute to widen unless an intervention occurs. Are there some ideas of how to appropriate co-design and implementation but impact in closing the gap measures? Well, are the measures right? How do you?
I think the digital divide is an absolute real thing. I think the measures, if anything, are maybe a little bit less than what's reported. And I think it would definitely depend on which communities you go to, and what their access needs or lack, or ability is. So I think it varies across various locations. What was the first part of the question? Yeah.
That's all right. So we might move on to the next one. Thanks for that. Troy, for those of us who are allies and have influence with senior government decision makers, what are the most respectful and effective ways to raise the need for decolonising systems, especially when we ourselves are part of those systems?
Great question. And I think it's always good to move beyond systems and structures and just to look at it as a really human issue. And at the heart of it, it's about creating empathy and using the complexity that confronts us all as human beings. You know, we've got existential crisis of climate on all of our doorsteps. We can see the fundamental changes in the structure and nature of weather systems, of weather events, and if, as the IPCC said, we have a really rapidly closing window of opportunity. So it's about having discussions as human beings about shared issues and trying to find common ground that move beyond the complexity of shared history in this country. So key for us is let's bring this all together, and we can strategize approaches and opportunities together. So please reach out, and happy to continue the conversations offline.
Thanks, brother. Martin's got a question for Uncle Felly. I might put this one to you. Thinking about Auntie Dr. Mary Graham's quote, how does the Billabong project work in a wider landscape of extract mining and industrial monoculture agriculture?
I don't understand the question, but I think that Billabongs are there to bring back water health, and they're an integral part of water health. And what we're looking for, or what I'm looking for with the Billabong, once it's on a macro scale, is to set up a counterbalance to the current formula that's really devastating our rivers, which is when you look at the pie chart, we have most of the water being taken up by industry and very little for human consumption, stock domestic and the environment. Well, this way, what we're doing, we can not disrupt the current thing, but we can put a counterbalance to it where we have sustainable things happening. So it's within our grasp. We can do it. We just got to have the will to do it. And what Aunt was saying is exactly right.
Thanks, Unc. Troy, do we have plans or interests to extend this project outside of the basin?
Absolutely. We want to scale right across Australia. We know that we have really sound thinking, evidence-based thinking that support the pillars of agency and activation in this initiative. And we know that we already have a model inside the First Nations Ranger programs right across the country that are working. So the aspiration is to scale nationally. And once we get past the initial funding hurdle, and we actually establish the pilot, and we start to generate evidence, I think that the flow-on effects will cascade fairly quickly after that.
Well, this throws one out here. There seems to be limited sites in Victoria. Will the signing of a treaty create more opportunity for this project?
So we scale up. So we have 3 initial trial sites, and then we scale up to an additional 6. That's based upon the original economic figure that we're asking for. But we're only limited by funding scope and the size of the envelope that we can attract from collaboration and partnerships with industry and government. So a treaty will no doubt enhance opportunities for us to be able to really get traction across Victoria, and we hope that becomes a model that then can be replicated across the other states and territories of the basin. Fingers crossed. It's really good progress considering that we're only a couple of years out from the referendum, which was an overwhelming no vote.
We've got a question here from Indonesia, but we'll do an international one. How to deal with the impact of land use changes that occur in the river basin in Billabong or other places? Are there any other anticipations due to climate change?
It's a really good question. I think we've seen fundamental changes to the basin proper since colonization began. So we've got a really intricate history that lies behind us in terms of large scale changes to the natural resource assets across the basin. And if we don't act fast, there's no reason why that scale of change won't increase. It's like we said, we have a window of opportunity to be able to change the status quo, and I think that we should all collaborate to be able to ensure that we seize that opportunity.
Question here for Barry. Are there plans to deliver this kind of presentation to different stakeholders to share and promote the positive impacts it is having?
Yes, we've already presented it to a few stakeholders, but really it would depend on who stakeholders are. So I guess with First Nations communities, it's not really about a presentation like this. It's about having a yarn to them and seeing what's important to them and how it would work with them. I think it really depends on the stakeholders that we're wanting to engage with and what that looks like. Our presentation to NIA was slightly different to this. Our presentation to the Queensland Brain Institute, again, took a different sort of view, but it would really depend on the stakeholders, who they were, what they wanted to know and what was important to them. And like I said, if they were First Nations communities, it would be about engaging with them and seeing sort of, what they wanted to do, how they wanted to engage with the work.
If Australia does host COP31 next year, committee to the parties of the Paris Accord, what ways would you see amplifying the project there?
Would be a wonderful forum to be able to share the aspiration and the intent of the initiative, and to be able to raise to an international audience the level of complexity and challenge that we're facing across the Murray-Darling Basin as Aboriginal people, but also as regional local communities that will inevitably face a future with less water. So I think it'd be a wonderful opportunity to be able to engage with that forum and elevate the urgency of the issues that we're facing.
What sites are we looking at for the project to be based in the northern part of the basin?
Still to be determined. So, but the years quickly got away from us. But we're still in negotiation with particular sites. So, if anyone's engaged with Aboriginal communities before, it's you got to go slow to go fast, and that's the best way of answering that.
Well, there've been certainly some great questions there. I think we hand it over to James to round us out. Thank you, everyone.
First of all, thank you so much to our presenters. We had about 200 people live, and it's really great to have people take time out of their busy days for these webinars. One Basin CRC runs monthly webinars on the first Wednesday of every month with our partners at Australian Water School. The next webinar is on December 3rd, so that's the first Wednesday in December, and is the topic is Public First Nations Data. Is it data nullius? So that's about our Indigenous Digital Data Sovereignty program project, which will be very informative and very interesting as well. So I encourage you to follow the links, sign up for that, and set aside a lunchtime as well. If you want to find out more about what we do at One Basin CRC, I highly encourage you to visit our website, onebasin.com.au. You can sign up to our newsletters to keep informed about all the different projects we run, and you can also explore our project pages to find out more, including about this one. We do have a page up for our Billabong project with a project prospectus and things like that to find out more if you are interested in learning more and getting involved. For those of you who are interested in these things, you will get a certificate of attendance emailed to you in the next couple of business days. There will be a recording of this webinar up in the next week or so if you want to review any of it, as well as I believe the slides will be shared around to those of you who attended live. And one final thing, if you have some feedback, please scan the QR code so you can leave some feedback about our webinar program, maybe things you do want to hear more about in the future. And yeah, that's all from me. Thank you all so much for your time and have a great week. Thanks.